Hello, Empire. Welcome to this week's edition of Regent's Corner. So, Garrett, your lovely neighborhood regent here. So, today's video, we're going to base off of pick up where we left off last week with the carving. And next, after we carve, we have stamping. So, I went ahead and pre-carved and pre-cased the leather because I don't have the time to sit here and watch leather dry. But as you can see, I took my time. We got really nice, clean, crisp lines on this design. This by itself is pretty nice. But now we're going to take it up a notch. So by stamping, first of all, this is going to be a two-part video because I cannot do all of what I consider stamping in one video. So part one, we're going to talk about backgrounding and I brain farted. Beveling. So we're going to bevel the edges and we're going to background this. Now, when you're talking background, let me just use my little pointer here. So I personally, as a matter of artistic style, I like the background all and shading all this place. I think it feels like it gives it depth, gives it a little texture, adds a little something to it. Not necessarily required. Plenty of people would simply bevel the inside and outside edges without any problem. So now then, let's talk bevelers. With bevelers, you have, let's see if I can get this angle here, a fairly wide one. The steeper angle, this is just, frankly, a cheap one from Tandy Leather. Once again, Barry King makes some fantastic bevelers, but they're a little pricier. These are about, and then this is a much smaller one there, and this one's about, they're about $6-8 at Tandy Leather. So they're pretty cheap. Then we have our backgrounders. This is what's called a pear shader because obviously it's pear-shaped. They come in different sizes, different textures. This happens to have a pretty standard, more modern cross pattern there. Let me show you kind of how that looks there. So you got that nice little X. Very standard time there. You get different sizes. You can get square. Get really small. And typically you use these. Let's show you the different sizes you can use, different there with the cross patterns. Now my personal ones that I really like to use is these more rougher shape, pear shape and round ones. And I like this because it gives it a more rough, hammered look texture. And I think it looks really good with my style of backgrounding. So you see you get a much more kind of rougher, hammered look. So it's just a matter of personal style. So in this case, what we're going to do is I'm going to use my big beveler. And when we bevel, I like to start in a corner right there. Try to do this so you can actually see it. I'm going to have to do this left-handed here. Forgive me. So all we're going to do is tap, slide it over, tap. Now, like I discussed in the casing leather video, when you're doing the background, especially the beveling, you want to make sure the leather's almost all the way dry. So you get a nice crisp, and you're going to drop that corner into the leather. Hope you can see that. So it's like that. You don't want to be angling it this way. You don't want it too far this way. It's just set and drop into there. So this away. I know this probably can't see this too well in the video. I should probably move the camera to the other side. Might try that in the future. So when you're beveling, you don't have to hit it hard. You're just going to light taps Move it over just ever so slightly. I like to move it about halfway over. Make sure I get it in there. And then usually once I'm done that, I'll go back over because I have all the little tool marks in here. So I like to go back over my modeling spoon and I just smooth those edges out. I can usually smooth the hammer marks, tool marks out. Now if you go nice and slow, remember slow is fast, smooth is fat. Smooth is fast, fast is smooth. So just give you an idea of how much texture we can add to this versus not having it. Now you can totally, and a lot of people do this, another viable option, and this is more of a matter of artistic style, and depending on what you're making and what you're carving, you may or may not want to do this. Just depends on how much you like to bevel. So you can also bevel on the inside, and that gives it a, like I said, gives it a nice texture, gives it kind of 3D look. So I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and finish this line off. And I'll show you this one, and then I'll do one where I do the backgrounder. Now with the bevels, though, you can get textured bevels, smooth bevelers, checkered beveled. They come in a variety of styles, so if you want to add a little more pizzazz to it, I'm thinking about finding one myself. And then, you know, I like to come back with the, over it with the modeling spoon. And there you go. You have a really nice, well beveled there. And that's one way to do it. Now, my personal way I like to do things. And then also, when you have, especially when you're doing a lot of Celtic knotwork, you want to bevel the lines here. Because that's going to give it that nice, crisp, give it that weaved look. A little three-dimensional. So as we see, we kind of finished that corner there. You get that nice, makes it look like it's going under, over. Nice weave look. So that's one way to do it. Now, like I said, where's my favorite beveler? So this case in here, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to bevel this. I am going to, so when I do a background shading, I work right into the edge of the line work, and I can press that line down on the inside. And I'm just using my 1 pound maul here. You don't need a lot of weight. You're not going to be slamming it. You're not hammering this. You're just tapping. Hence why I kind of double tap everything. This helps you control the depth if you need to hit it a little bit harder. But if your leather's properly cased, you shouldn't need to do that. And so that's the background texture. And then usually with this one, I come back in with my big round one and just smooth that out. So here now I have my background texture, which is my personal style. We have a beveled style, which is very common and very easy to do. And there. So let's just go ahead and let's just do this piece. So I'm going to, oh gosh, let me try to do this to where you can see it. I really should have moved the camera here. So I'm just putting that corner, that sharp edge into the line there. So I'm hoping you can see that. I have no grand plans of creating a YouTube channel. And it does not require a lot of force. You're not, remember, we're not slamming this in here. We're just compressing the leather. I'm a big component of let the tools do the work. If you're, especially when you get into crazy leather crafting and you're sitting here carving and stamping for, some guys will do it for 8-9 hours a day. More power to them. I couldn't do that. I don't have 9 hours a day to sit here and do this. So we're just gonna, like I said, we're gonna get all the edges, keep making sure that edge is orientated into the line there. Nice straight up and vertical. And you want to do this. Now the more complex stuff, you're going to definitely be here for a while longer. I did this design because it was a pretty basic. Make sure. And as you see, I'm just tap, move, tap. And this is allowing me not, so you're not leaving tool marks. But I'm still getting my depth perception. And this is what really takes your piece of your artwork up another notch. I may have to do a video on how to judge leather work and leather goods and such. But if you're doing art and stuff, this is kind of what you want to do. You want to have the edges beveled. You want to have, if not background. Now, if you're going to paint the insides, then I would not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to background it, but you definitely want to bevel it. Gosh, it might be easier for me to do this left-handed. Let's see, one more spot. I think we got one more line here. I'm not going to bother with the outside because I don't think you guys want to watch me bevel a piece, and I don't know how to work time stamp. I'll speed up time. But as you can see, it is probably one of the more time-consuming parts of the job, because if you don't do this right, you can take a really nice clean piece and all your carving work goes out the window if you don't do this part properly. That being said, you can also hide a lot of line work and line issues and little mistakes by doing really good beveling and backgrounding and shading. Trust me, you can really hide and get away with a lot of stuff with that. So, as you see here, just by doing that, how much more depth we have now compared to what we had when we started. And I haven't even begun to do the outside. I mean, if I was to do this whole piece, let me just do this so we can. Now, if you have a piece there, you can throw a little weight bag on there, and that'll probably be a future project here soon. I'll start showing you how to make some tools. But this is just a really simple, easy project to practice with, and that helps hold your leather down. So it doesn't slide around everywhere on you. I'm just going to do one more little. Voila. And then when you're working around round corners, it's no different. Just take smaller movements. Light, fast taps. I don't like to work the leather down too much. You don't want to be sitting here doing, big hits. I like to go back over it several times if need be to get the depth and what I want. I don't like to make strong hits. I like to make light, fast, rapid hits. Because technically, depending on how steep or how wide you want your beveling. So you can see the difference between my beveling on this side where it was pretty straight and kind of clean in depth. This one's a little further out there. Now, another thing you can do is I do this a lot too. Let's say you don't want to bevel. You hate beveling, or you don't want to buy the tools, or your significant other can't handle all the tappity tap 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 sound. You can take a modeling spoon and get a very similar effect. Now it's going to be more subtle and not as strong or as deep as a beveler, and definitely not as versatile as a beveler, for sure. But you can go over it several times, as you see me doing here. And right here is what I did with the modeling spoon. A little more subtle, a little stronger. It's all what you want to do. And then in here I did the beveling. Now you can also do the same thing with the spoon work. Not the spoon work. You can still work all your under over. So even if you don't have a bevel, you don't want to sit here and listen to the tap tap. You got roommates, significant others, kids, cats, whatever, they can't handle it. You can use a modeling spoon. Now, like I said, it's generally not as strong or as deep, and it tends to be more subtle, but sometimes subtle can be good. You don't always have to make some super strong background. Now, either way, I still tend to take my modeling spoon and go back over everywhere I beveled anyways to help smooth out work marks, tool marks, and such. And I find it to be maybe overkill. Eventually you'll get good enough you won't have to worry about tool marks in your beveling. But I will say this also, if you're just absolutely on a time crunch, modeling spoon is definitely fast. Can be faster than beveling. It just, like I said, just creates a more subtle. So now, let's go ahead and, let's do it my way. And we're just going to background stamp. Now, the thing with the pear shape is that's designed to get into the corners and the edges, sharp points of the project. And like I said, you don't have to background shade like this. You can do this particular style is just the way I like it. It's just what I like. And that's what this is all about. It's about you and how expressing do what you like. Don't, if you develop your own style, by all means. Just because this is what I do doesn't mean you have to do it. Like, nobody should be telling you how to do, really. It's your style. This is just what I like and how I like to do things. You can easily just keep that inside beveled. And then, especially if you're going to paint it multiple colors, I could see doing that. But I like the look and texture of a beveled piece, a backgrounded shade. And then usually what I'll do is I will paint the main portion here one color, and then I'll typically black out or dye the inside a different color, typically black or some other subdued brown, other color to create contrast. I might even do a painting leather video. That might be a good video. Tell you what. Well, part 2 will be more stamping. Right now we're just doing background and stuff. And then what we'll do is in part 2, we will cover like stamps, how to stamp border stamps, how to make that kind of stuff. And as you see, if you notice, I'm leaving this leather very dry. I have not re-wetted it at all because I kind of, when it comes to stamping, you generally want the leather to be a little firmer, especially when you're beveling. Now, when you're doing this stamping, you could get away with a little bit softer, but it tends to turn mushy and you won't get as crisp edges. So you get the gist of the video by now. And I'm just going to finish this one little piece off because my OCD will not let me. And so voila, we went from a very well-defined there to much more depth, much more texture just by stamping. And that is the whole point of stamping. Now, I did kind of forget to mention one last pro tip. When you go to stamp, a lot of times, depending on your project, especially if they're small, thinner leather, it will stretch. So the way we stop it from stretching, before we even do all this, and I should have done this from the video beginning, take some tape, and you're going to tape the back of it. Okay? So I'd like to use painter's tape. You don't want to use anything too strong because it will rip up the back end. And this will hold the back down. It'll keep the leather from expanding and stretching. And because you can do... So, for example, Prime Project. I had done this. This was supposed to be an early project I did. It was a wallet. So you can see where I stamped it, it stretched out. Because I did not know about taping the back side. So, before you case your leather, before you start stamping, put some blue, green, leapfrog, painter's tape, masking tape. I prefer painter's tape on the back, and then you're going to go ahead and do your stamping. Okay, and that'll keep the and then let that dry, and that'll keep it from curling and the leather from stretching and other things. So I think that will end part 1 on stamping, and as we see the before and after, how much more depth and texture we have compared to the plain Jane. In part 2, I'll cover border stamps, marker stamps, and such as that. So and with that, I think I have rambled on enough with this video. So with that, until next time, stay crafty.